Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Film Club Podcast, where every month we deep dive into different aspects of cinema, directors, genres, actors, or franchises. It doesn't matter, because it's always fun at the Film Club. I'm Dean.
I'm Becky.
And this month we are continuing on the filmography of the one great John Carpenter. That's right, we're returning to a director we've already covered on this podcast.
We've met him.
He was great. But yes, we are going to continue on with the John Carpenter filmography because we've done a lot of his 80s run, most of his 70s stuff, but we're kind of filling out the greater edges of his filmography.
Yes.
And to do that, we're going to be talking about his fourth feature film, The Fog.
It's crazy to think that this is his fourth.
Yeah, because it's like, I guess if it depends on how you want to count Dark Star, but it's like Dark Star, Assault on Precinct 13, which we've covered, Halloween, which we've covered a lot, and then this one. And it's interesting that this is his follow-up to Halloween, right?
Back-to-back bangers.
I would... okay, Halloween is better than The Fog.
Well, obviously.
But yeah, like The Fog is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love The Fog.
Oh yeah, you've been...
I've been waiting to do this movie for a long time.
Yeah, I remember I had to lobby real hard for Escape from New York over The Fog when we did Carpenter the first time around.
Yeah, you did.
I do that sometimes.
You do, and then, it comes to your months, and then I lobby for things, and then that's like the highest listened to episode. So sometimes I got it.
Sometimes hopefully this is a high listened episode.
Hopefully we got it, because we were dealing with the killer fog. What was it, last month? Where we just kept getting fog night after night, and people were like, they're pumping out the fog, they're putting stuff in the fog, people are getting sick, and I'm like...
It's the chemtrails.
I was like, this movie, it's going to get back into circulation, it's going to be back in the theaters. I can't wait.
I like how your parameters for picking movies is, how will this fit into conspiracy theorists on Instagram?
No, it's just, conspiracies work sometimes.
They do.
And you love a good conspiracy theory.
I want to do a conspiracy theory month so bad, where we do like conspiracy, we do like JFK. We're working it out. We're working it out. But yeah,
you're working it out with your red yarn over there.
We need the red yarn. But yeah, we're talking about The Fog today, and this movie is really, really fascinating in Carpenter's filmography. One, because it's like so early, and it's the first like kind of real studio he ever works with. Mm-hmm. But even then, they don't give him a lot of money.
No. Which
you think he would get a pretty sizable budget after
Halloween.
Yeah, which made, what is it, $65 million against a $300,000 budget. In this movie,
it'd be like that sometimes.
It do be like that sometimes. Don't worry, that was the spooky fog ghost. Yes, but because like Halloween is this massive hit. It's like the highest grossing independent film of all time at that point. Mm-hmm. And the people who make this, Embassy Pictures, who made like The Graduate and like a bunch of other like significant films, were like, oh, we'll like pick up John Carpenter and give him $800,000, because that was the budget of this movie originally, was $800,000.
Yeah.
To just film what is essentially an EC Comics film. Like, this movie feels like a Tales from the Crypt episode just extended to feature length, right?
I suppose.
You suppose? Are you not seeing it, or am I like seeing something that's not there?
This movie has just been a part of my life for such a long time that it is what it is.
If we had catchphrases, this movie's been a part of my life for such a long time, that would be part of your catchphrase.
Yes, that would, because I don't remember watching this for the first time. It's always been there.
Which is interesting, because, I mean, the movie, because you like Universal Monsters, right?
Yeah.
And Universal Monster movies are kind of more like this. They're not really scary, but they're full of atmosphere.
Yeah, and it's, you don't have too much gore in this movie. I think that's why it was shown to me at such a young age, because it's vibes. It's
atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I think that's like
And you have the amazing Adrienne Barbeau in it. which I knew from Batman the Animated Series. So it's just like...
She's in the animated series?
Catwoman.
She's Catwoman?
Yes.
What? I never knew that.
Yeah, so if we go to, a signing and she's there, because I know she still does signings, that is my internal struggle. What do I get? Do I get the Fog signed? Or do I get something Batman the Animated Series signed?
Wrong. You get Swamp Thing's merch signed because she was in Swamp Thing. That was, fun fact, one of the first pair of tits I've ever seen in a movie.
No, that was PJ Souls.
In Halloween. Well, that was the first.
And you told her that.
I did. And she was like, hey, you're not the first person to tell me that.
The way you blushed, I was like, he's not going to do it. No, he did it. And I was like, oh my God, he told PJ Souls, you were the first boobs I ever saw. And I was just like, oh,
and she was like, hey, I was a lot of people's first. Again, guys, you got to shoot your shot. But
he did.
But yeah, The Fog, it's just an interesting movie because it is a lot more atmosphere and tone than, I would say, plot or really story.
It's a lot like Jaws.
I mean, Jaws is a lot of tension, but I feel like that's actually a good comparison to The Fog, right? This feels like a Spielberg movie or like a Stephen King book where it's these really big ensemble casts. They're kind of making the town a character, or they're trying to.
Yeah.
And what we're missing is what Spielberg does a lot in Jaws, where, we're going to spend a lot of time and get a lot of little moments with these characters all around, and we're going to kind of build up these people, where in The Fog, it's very tight. It's almost like too tight because it's only like 90 minutes. This would be really, really like fleshed out, and we get a lot more nuances if it was maybe like 2 hours. If we got a little more time to spend with Nick and Liz,
and the pirates.
Yes, just make it so we like get a little bit more nuance for the pirate villains.
More flashbacks of the town, when all these injustices occurred. Because it's just, we're being told stories. But if we get the 2 hours where it's like we're seeing, this is when, the town conned the pirates out of their gold, then it's like, oh, okay. But it kind of works because it's a ghost story.
See, that's a great way to put it. This movie is like a ghost story. It's like the EC Comics Tales from the Crypt thing where I don't think we need flashbacks. That prologue is gold.
And it goes for a while.
I forget. It's a 5-minute fucking scene.
Yeah, I put it on when I was washing dishes last night. And I'm like, okay, I know this movie backwards and forwards. And I'm washing. And I'm like, he's still talking. And I turn and I look at the TV. And I'm like, no, we still have a ways to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who does that? Because that was a reshoot. Because that's like a famous thing about this is Carpenter watched the rough cut of the film and was like, nah, this ain't working. Like there's the plot's a little too confusing and there's not a lot of gore or scares. He basically made a mood piece and was like, we need to do some reshoots. And this was part of it, where they got the sea captain, who I think is an Oscar-winning actor or a nominated actor.
Was it Tommy Wallace?
I don't think it's Tommy Wallace, because Tommy Wallace plays the actual like pirate ghost. Neither here nor there. In the opening sequence, we get this 5-minute monologue by this actor.
Tommy Lee Wallace plays the pirate ghost.
Yeah.
But there's another, there's George Buck Flower that plays Tommy Wallace.
No, George Buck Flower is the, he's the guy who played all the like homeless people in all the 80s movies you like, because he shows up in like They Live and Escape from New York and a bunch of other movies. But besides the point,
he's a real sea captain telling this story.
Yes, a real it's a documentary. But
yes, it is.
This sea captain character, who's only in the prologue, he never shows up in the rest of the movie, is just telling this, one last ghost story. Just to keep us warm before, we hit our 100th anniversary. And he lays out the ghost story of the pirates and how the town shipwrecked them to steal their treasure, to build up
the
town. And it's this very moody, atmospheric showcase. And there's not like...
With great John Carpenter scoring behind it.
Amazing John Carpenter scoring behind this. I mean... okay, the Thing score is like probably the greatest score in any movie because it's Ennio Morricone. Halloween has the most iconic one. The Fog, though, is so goddamn good. It's so atmospheric. It's so like moody. That is how I'm going to describe this movie. It's very moody. And the opening is just a perfect laying out of that, and is why I don't think we would want flashbacks, but I would love if, because right after that is when we get to meet like Nick and Liz, who's played by Tom Atkins and
Jamie Lee
Curtis.
But before we even meet them, we go into the town, and then that's when we start to have things happen. You know, car alarms are going off, dogs are barking, things are breaking, and then we have the earthquake.
Yes, it's all the ghosty stuff, right? The building up of something supernatural's on the horizon. The clock
has struck 12, and all hell's breaking loose. And also, because it's, you know, April 21st, you know, when this happened, that's my grandma's birthday.
It's your grandma's birthday?
I was watching this with my mom a few weeks ago when we were supposed to record this one of the many times, and we got delayed because of, you know, life stuff.
Like the fires of LA.
The fires, our car died.
I'm shooting a movie.
You were shooting a movie. So, you know, lots of delays. But I was watching it with my mom, and then she's like, does that date sound familiar? And I'm like, it does, but I just, you know, I don't know why. And she's like, your grandmother? I'm like, that is grandma's. I'm like, oh, man. Grandma.
Abuelita's so angry.
I'm like, were you one of the pirates or were you one of the town people?
¿Por qué no las dos?
Why not both? I agree.
But yeah, like you're right, because we get that the ghost and the supernatural elements come in, and
it's California, so it's like you can believe, you know, oh, they're just having an earthquake. All these things are happening, and that's why the dogs are barking, you know.
I didn't even track that this was California.
Yeah.
Well, I know they shot it in California, but I never tracked this as California. It's almost like how in Jaws, I can never track if this is like an East Coast like sea town or a West Coast sea town.
Oh, it's definitely East Coast.
In Jaws?
Yeah. I mean, I know that it was shot in Martha's Vineyard, but it's supposed to be, you know, like Maryland, you know, one of those, you know, like very
like shory kind of places.
I keep thinking of like, you know, the sweaters, like the navy blue with the white stripes, and, you know, you're gonna go get a lobster roll, like that kind of, you know, atmosphere.
I get you.
I should have worn my navy blue and white striped sweater today.
Your navy sweater?
Yeah, I mean, I am wearing my Jaws socks today.
You always wear your Jaws socks.
No, I save them for special occasions like this movie.
I see. But I mean, like, that's the thing, at least for me, is it's not a flaw of the movie by any stretch of the imagination. It's my thing where I can never track where, like, what coast we are when we're doing, like, lots of movies.
I mean, you do know, you do recognize Texas and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right?
Well, yes.
Okay, because you're saying you never do, so I'm like, I don't know if you're just like, where are we?
It's mostly these coastal movies or whatever. It's also like in I Know What You Did Last Summer, where I was like, where the fuck? Okay, so it's like up like East Coast, because there's fishing things, but like everyone here looks Californian.
Yeah.
Like this, like at the OC, but it's definitely not the. It's that thing, right?
It's the OC before the OC.
Exactly, but I digress. I do like the nice place setting of the town. You know, we get the nice ghost stories. We meet all of our characters. We meet Adrienne Barbeau, who plays Stevie, who has the sickest fucking radio show up in a fucking lighthouse. That is so fucking cool.
That is goals for us.
To live in a lighthouse?
Live in a lighthouse, record our podcast in a lighthouse. I mean, we do love our home at Undercity Comics in Uptown Whittier. Come support the shop. Great shop. But wouldn't it be awesome? We had our own lighthouse. That's where we recorded and broadcasted from. We could watch the water. We could watch the fog come in.
It would be cool, but...
Do we have the voice of Stevie Wayne? No, we don't, unfortunately. But who does? Only Adrienne Barbeau.
This is also just interesting because this is Adrienne Barbeau's first feature film. Because she did a TV movie before this with Carpenter, which was... like, it's not A Stranger Calls, it's something else. But she works with Carpenter on a TV movie. They get married, so this is her first feature film production.
He wrote this character for her.
Yeah, and Adrienne Barbeau is a very good presence in this movie because she does feel like this woman who was probably a successful radio host in a bigger town like Chicago, New York, whatever.
I think she comes from Seattle.
Or Seattle, right? But she has that feeling of like, oh, she was this little fish in a big pond. And then she's like, well, now it's just me and my son. I want to go and live somewhere a little bit nicer or a little bit more small town vibe. And she comes here and she actually pulls off the vibe of being a radio host, right? And that's something that some actors can't do because some actors who are like, well, I'm an actor, and then when they play radio host, they either try and mimic like Howard Stern or try and be like, I'm just gonna be cool and disaffected by everything around me. The Clint Eastwood vibe
or
from Play
like
Misty for Me.
A Troy McClure like I get at the beginning of every episode.
Hello, I'm Troy McClure. Welcome to the Film Club Podcast.
Yes.
But yeah, that's
and then you calm
thing.
down, and then you're you, and it's like, hey, he's back.
I do that for the intros. But that's the thing about Barbeau's character and how she's portraying her is it's a very...
realistic.
It's realistic. It's also not over the top. Like, I could imagine listening to Stevie Wayne,
on the radio.
On the radio, it doesn't sound like this hackney radio DJ performance. It sounds very naturalistic, which is good because the movie is so not natural.
Yeah.
It's a fucking ghost story with ghost pirates.
It's supernatural.
Yes, it's supernatural. But we get to meet her. We also get to meet, as I've been trying to get to, Nick and Liz Atkins and Curtis. And if this was a traditionally written plot, right, where we have one main character, it's not an ensemble or whatever, they would be the characters we would follow, right?
Yeah.
She's this girl who's trying to make her hitchhike her way across Seattle or across California. She ends up picking up with this local sailor guy. They kind of meet, fall in love, whatever, and he's trying to find his buddy, and she's like, well, I'll stick around. And romance.
I'm working my way to Santa Barbara, so it's like, yeah, I can take a couple of days and just help you find your friend that's in this random boat.
Yeah.
What a wild time.
A wild time to be alive. But it's a thing where they would be the characters I think you would follow. It would be them or Stevie.
You would think it would be Stevie.
Yeah.
She's who we meet first. We're really brought into her life. We're brought into her home. We see, she has a son. And, she's opened up this new recording studio in a lighthouse. It's like, yeah, she's our main character. And then it's like, well, no, we have, Nick and Liz. And then we have Kathy and Sandy. So it's like we have all these characters, and then we have the priest.
Yeah, and then we have Father Malloy. And it's a thing where each one of them could lead their own plot a little bit. Maybe not so much Sandy and
Kathy.
And Kathy, because their whole thing is, we're setting up the 100th anniversary centennial or whatever. They're more like almost comic relief.
It's Janet Leigh.
Yes, it's Janet Leigh.
It's the original Scream Queen. I must follow.
Yes, I get it. Because of the actor, not the character, you're interested.
Tomato. I must follow.
I get it. But it's the thing where each one of them has their own little plot beats and stories that they're carrying on with and moving forward with.
Which is interesting.
No, it is interesting. It's the ensemble storytelling that's going on here. It's just that ensemble storytelling where we're gonna follow 3 or 4 separate plot lines that are all gonna kind of intermingle and meet at the climax of the film is, to me, it's a little awkward because none of them are able to reach the crescendo moment in a meaningful amount of time for it to feel satisfactory, right? Like, I would love to follow Stevie's story because she's unraveling the mystery of the fog coming in, or she's tracking this dangerous thing coming in, and the Nick and Liz story, because they're the ones boots on the ground finding his friend's boat who've been like murdered and things like that. And those two stories are really like the driving force of what's going on, because like traditionally, like film storytelling is action. Every character is doing an action to move forward to a defined goal kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Malloy, or the father, is like, I'm uncovering a mystery, but I'm not leaving my priesthood. I'm just reading a book. And then the Kathy story, Kathy and Sandy's story is more almost like window dressing of the town's a real place and we're getting ready for the centennial. They're more like world building, but they're not pushing forward a plot to get to a defined goal of stopping the pirates.
And then you're forgetting the main character itself, the fog.
Yes, and then there's the fog, but the fog is just this atmospheric dread force just coming down upon this town, right? It's the theme where it's like,
what is it? Why is it?
Yeah, what is it? Why is it? It's revenge, it's guilt.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you can't run away from the past. Like the fog, the past will, the consequences of your past will roll over you, and you cannot escape it. And that's the theme of the story, which I like. It's cool. Like, I like how John Carpenter's like, I'm gonna make a movie about like generational like guilt and revenge and make it like a ghost story with like zombie pirates. That's bad fucking ass. I'm down with it. Again, I love the movie. I love all the atmosphere. I love all the individual character stuff. It's just when it comes together, it almost like the parts are better than the whole, or no, the whole's better than the parts kind of thing. Like, it all comes together well, and I really like it when I'm watching it. But when I think about the plot, I'm like, well, fuck me. Like, what the fuck actually happened, But again, I digress.
And it takes us, basically the entirety of the movie to unravel what happened.
Yes.
Because it's like, is it just killer fog? Is this what it is? It's just something that's coming off the ocean and it's, just wreaking havoc. Well, that doesn't make sense. We're seeing weapons. Are there people in the fog? And then it's like, no, they're ghost pirates in the fog. And that's fucking awesome. It's like Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island.
No, it's far more like Pirates of the Caribbean. Which, by the way, Pirates of the Caribbean, you owe John Carpenter some money. All right, this is what the ghost pirate shit is not in the ride. All right, you just stole from Carpenter.
Both great films.
Very good, very great films. But yeah, like, again, I can pitter patter. We can pitter patter about like whether or not the multiple plot lines work or don't work. I think what is more interesting is the fact the movie is as functional as it is, knowing that Carpenter didn't really like the original cut of it. And I'm curious, could you see the stuff he added in later? The gore stuff, the opening sequences, like all the other little like jump scare stuff.
It's been around too long. I know it too well that it's like I don't really pick up on that was added in for this. Like, no, it's all one cohesive thing for me.
Do you have any idea what Carpenter might have seen in it where he didn't like it? Because Carpenter watched the rough cut of it and was like, nah, this ain't it, fam, and reshot a bunch of stuff. The production company spent an extra, what was it? Like $300 million or $300,000, not $300 million. No, they would just like scrapped it. $300,000 to reshoot a bunch of stuff. Get in the mind of John Carpenter,
A little difficult, but
hard to get into the master of horror like that.
Yes, because I'm not a master of horror. I just, enjoy it very much. But again, I think because I'm so biased and I love this movie, I can't really see what he would dislike and what he would have wanted to change. I mean, it's a great movie.
It's just a great movie.
It's a great movie. It's great vibes. I mean, I can see where maybe reshots would have been done for like the fog effects. Because, I mean, that is a lot of fog to pump into, open places. You're not on a soundstage, you're in a town. So it's like, I can see where, maybe that would have to be reshot. But other than that, no. I mean, maybe it was the studio saying the pirates needed to be more gory. You needed more, action, less suspense, where Jaws was, what, 2 years before this?
Jaws was 70...
Was it 78 or was it 77?
It might have been 77. I'd have to look it up, but it's in the 70s. So it's a few years before this, and it's part of that blockbuster boom.
So it could have been a thing where, maybe someone at a studio was like, hey, we get it. You're kind of going for that Jaws element where we can't see the monster. We're just, afraid of our surroundings, and we need more. We need to step up from that.
Do you think this movie's in conversation with Spielberg? Because it's very interesting because... What is it? I think we talked about that when we did Starman years ago, where Starman is a Spielberg movie directed by John Carpenter.
Yeah.
And The Fog is almost like the scrappier supernatural, like Jaws kind of thing. So is John Carpenter like in conversation with Spielberg at this era? It's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have Jaws that has people lined up, around the blocks to get into the theaters to see this. It was, I don't remember how long it was running for, but there was such high demand. And then you have Halloween, where it's the same thing, where it was just this, it's not going to do anything. And then, no, it ended up blowing everyone's mind. Everyone was seeing it. It had, I think, a pretty decent run. I know it didn't have too many theaters, but once it really... everyone was talking about it, then it was like, we have to put it everywhere.
Well, what really blew Halloween up was Siskel and Ebert praised the movie, and that was back in the days when a critic's like good review could actually like boost it.
It's not like now where you need like TikTok, Instagram to be like, this is the #1 movie. Like, all right,
Siskel and Ebert, the OG TikTok influencers.
Exactly.
I know you hate Siskel and Ebert, but they made Halloween work.
I don't hate them. It's just, it's very interesting to see, where we differ.
What they like and what they don't like.
Yeah. Where it's just like, how do you not love this acclaimed movie that everybody loves? It's like, oh, that was pretty mid. I give it 2. But then it's like, Halloween, that John Carpenter, he knows his shit. That, go see it. And it's like, I agree. But it's like, it's weird that we finally agree on something.
Yeah, like they love Halloween, but they hate Friday the 13th. It's very interesting, but
I mean, you do love the bacon.
I do. I can't wait for us to get into the next movie of the year.
Yes,
but we'll get to that.
Yes, I can't wait.
But fuck, I forgot what we were saying. But yeah,
we were talking about how this is in contention with Steven Spielberg.
Or in conversation, because now that I'm thinking about it, it's kind of interesting because Spielberg is like doing the mainstream equivalency of what Carpenter's doing in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Spielberg is as a guy who's also inspired by pulpy action serials. He's inspired by old comic books. He's doing like genre-y stuff, and then he's doing genre-y stuff, but he's making it for a more family-friendly mainstream audience, right? It's like the thing. He does E.T., the family-friendly alien movie, and John Carpenter does The Thing, which is the more cynical, like adult-oriented alien invasion movie. It's very interesting to think about that.
Made us cry little bitch tears.
Little baby bitch tears.
My God. And that
The
movie...
Thing's a beautiful movie.
That movie rose up in my list of, all-time favorite John Carpenter movies.
The Thing?
No, Starman.
Oh, yeah, and then later he does Starman, Starman, I was talking more about, like, the Thing in the E.T. because they came out the same year, but also...
Which is...
like,
wild.
Oh, no. Here's the wild thing. The Thing in E.T. comes out the same year. The same weekend, The Thing in Blade Runner release. And then I think the week after that is like fucking Jedi or some shit. I don't know. It's something ridiculous.
Was it like Empire Strikes Back and then something else really big came out that weekend too? It was like...
1983 is one of the most insanely stacked years.
Like 77?
Like 77, 76, like 99. Like there's some stacked fucking years in cinema. But... yeah, it's. I think that's an interesting just subject of thought is Spielberg and Carpenter are like the two, like the yin and the yang of the 1980s, right? Because
you can't say Carpenter is the Spielberg of the horror community, and you can't say that Spielberg is the Carpenter of just hitting you in the feels. these two men are so different, but it's like they're on the same wavelength.
Well, it's the thing because what is it? Spielberg owns the 1980s in mainstream box office because he basically does no wrong. He does Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's another one. Spielberg opens the decade, I believe, with Raiders of the Lost Ark, and
another banger.
And Carpenter eventually kind of closes his like run, later on in the late 80s with Big Trouble in Little China. Big Trouble in Little China and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Oh, they're both pulpy, big action movies that are kind of like Raiders of the Lost Ark is a globetrotting adventure, and Big Trouble in Little China is isolated in Chinatown in San Francisco, but it feels very like big and globetrotting. Oh, it's this American and this fish out of water thing. It's interesting because I'm starting to realize that Steven Spielberg and John Carpenter are both parallel entities of the 1980s that are kind of doing the same thing, except everything Spielberg does makes a shit ton of fucking money. And everything Carpenter does is diminishing returns of the movie he made previously. It is so sad, everyone. If you look at Carpenter's like box office, it is a series of amazing films, amazing artistic achievements, and just depressing box office returns one after the other. Because what is it? The Fog was a box office hit, right? It's $1 million budget, makes $21 million at the box office. The critics didn't like it, but whatever. They weren't fans of horror. They usually don't. But you got to think about it. Oh, it's a $21 million box office return. Well, that's pretty good. And his movie right before that, Halloween, made like triple that on less of a budget. So you got to be like, well, fuck me, guy. Like, all right, whatever. And then the movie he follows up The Fog with Escape from New York, which is like, oh, $6 million budget, still only makes $20 million at the box office. Oh, shit. Okay, are we just capped at 20 million? Are we not making all of our returns back? It's just interesting. And The Fog is a really good contextualization of Spielberg does Jaws, Carpenter does The Fog. And it's just very interesting. But yeah, we just went on a rant real quick. But The Fog, the actual movie.
But you love going on a rant, so
love it. But yeah, the Fog. So where do we want to go from here? Because I think your point on the effects of the fog stuff is interesting. Because what is it? They do the remake in like 2005 or whatever, and it's CGI fog.
Yeah. We don't talk about that movie.
Have you seen it?
Of course I have.
Of course you have?
Of course I have.
Big fan?
I was like 14 at the time. I was like, I gotta watch this. It's one of, my all-time favorites. They're remaking it. I think this was around the same time as the Texas Chainsaw remake.
I believe so. I think Assault Precinct 13 came out around the same time too.
And then we also had House of Wax.
Yeah, with Paris Hilton.
So this was that time where it's like all these major horror films were being remade with, well-known people of the early 2000s, and I'm like, I gotta watch it.
And they were bumping up better effects and putting more money into these movies that were supposed to be these cheap little horror flicks.
And I was just like, no, leave it to the past. I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the remake, was decent compared to what we have now with the remakes. And after we did our whole month, and I was like,
now you understand. You're like, fuck, after the first one, we're on a downhill slope really quick.
I mean, Texas 2, that one holds a special place in my heart.
Yes.
That one was a lot of fun.
Okay, after 2, it's a pretty steep decline.
Yeah, it is. But, I wasn't a fan of the remake. It's always available for free everywhere.
Yes, the Fog remake.
Yeah, I'm like, I haven't watched The Fog in a while. I'm going to go and I'll look it up. And I'm like, oh, there it is. And it's like the remake. I'm like, no, fuck no. No, I want the original. Thank you, Prime. I mean, you'd think in 2005 when technology is a little bit better, there's more, to access. Hey, it might look, even more ominous, more scary. And it's like, no, this movie from 1980, that looks scary. A whole wall of it. All your windows completely covered in fog and the lights. And it's just like, I would not be stepping outside.
Well, it's just funny because in the remake, it's all CGI and they're going to try, now we can control the fog and make it a really living, breathing entity and all that. we're in the 80s one, which again, testament to the practical effects and the gritty nature of the Carpenter like filmmaking mindset of, you know, we're just gonna get a fucking fog machine from Party City, a couple of cool lights, and we're gonna kind of flash them in at an angle, and it's just gonna look like otherworldly and creepy. And it's like that you really can't fake that, because it's real, and the fog just moves however fog moves, and it just naturally feels like something that's just drifting and otherworldly. And when you shine like those lights through it, it feels weird, and it's a part of the atmosphere of the movie.
The atmosphere, it's also knowing your surroundings. So I've grown up, you know, partially in a beach town, and you know, I know what the fog looks like when it rolls in on the beach. The house I lived in, because you're living in that area, you want to see your surroundings. So it's like lots of open windows, lots of, you know, you don't have walls like a regular house, and then it's just, you know, you have your big window that looks out onto the...
There's a reason they call them bay windows, so you can look out onto the bay.
Onto the bay, exactly. So that's why it's like, you know, okay, attention to detail. And then once you have the fog that just rolls up against the glass and you're not seeing anything, I've had that happen, and it's terrifying. And it's like, I know that it's fog coming off the ocean. And with this movie, it's like, oh yeah, well, it's really foggy. Well, that's kind of weird how thick it is, but okay. And then you have the lights, and then you have, you know, people knocking on the doors. I'm like, that's terrifying, to be completely surrounded and not being able to see what's going on. And I think that works with John Carpenter, who's just our new master of suspense, because it's just, let me scare you with an element.
Well, it's the thing where Carpenter's trying to replace the darkness with the fog, right? Because everyone's afraid of the dark because they can't see anything. And he's trying to use the fog. Like, oh, it's like the old thing where it's like, the dark doesn't scare you. It's what's in the dark that scares you. And he's trying to do the same thing, but with this fog where the fog surrounds you. But the thing about the fog is the fog's not what scares you. It's what's in the fog that scares you. And that's Captain Blake, I believe is the pirate's name. And that's also interesting because you never get a good look at any of the fucking pirates.
No.
They're all these guys who are just these dark silhouettes, and they look like, you know, ancient fishermen or whatever with these glowing red eyes. And that's all they are, which is why I get a very like EC Comics horror vibe, right? Where it's usually in those like old Tales from the Crypts, it's like, oh, we're gonna see like the monster, and they're gonna be these dark silhouettes in the background of the frame. And then by the end of the comic, you're going to turn and, oh, big splash page. There's the zombie monster thing. Now we can see it. And, ooh, how scary. But I think that's another thing is Carpenter is really inspired by that kind of like horror storytelling. You know, because it's like this movie feels very, very reminiscent of that kind of ghost story, you know, where we're not going to see him in, oh, we're going to have him in the fog, and it's going to be really like dark and silhouette-y, and they're going to have the red eyes, and it's going to look like a comic book frame. When Father Malloy is holding the fucking gold cross out, and the Captain Blake grabs it and they start sparking in flames or whatever, I'm like, that looks like something out of one of those fucking 50s comic books where it's like, oh, the priest is holding his cross and defending the people. It looks good. Yeah. Which is, you know, the thing about this movie. It looks really good.
It does look really good. And that's what I think is sad when you get a remake, because it's like, it doesn't need it. And it's like, on top of it not needing a remake, you didn't, you know, one-up it.
Yeah.
It's like, there, you know, you had, you know, I guess the opportunities to do it. And it's like, you still couldn't beat, you know, this movie from the 80s that it was probably a lot of trial and error to, you know, is that too much? Can we see anything? Is it too obnoxious? Is it not enough fog?
There's a reason Carpenter reshot a lot of it.
Yeah.
You know, where it's just like, it's fucking just not coming together.
And then it's like, you know, we've been on enough sets where it's like, wow, the wind picked up tonight when we weren't expecting it to. You're in a coastal town where there's a lot of wind because of water, you know, wind's coming off the ocean, and it's just, you have to reset, or you're going to have to wait for another day to do it because, you know, it's just too much to contend with. And it's like, wow. Yeah, leave it to the experts like John Carpenter.
Exactly. But another thing that I kind of wanted to talk about, and we kind of brushed over it near the beginning, but it just kind of dawned on me. We're talking about, oh, Carpenter really knows how to do this, really knows how to do this fog stuff, this tension, the EC comic stuff. It's interesting that he decides to make the fog after Halloween, because in my mind, Halloween is the most like, well, after you do this, you can kind of do whatever you want next, right? And he decides to do the fog, and I'm wondering why he chose to do this as opposed to any of the other scripts he had lying around, because he was a screenwriter for a long time. He has a bunch of scripts. Do you think it's because he knew he could do something with these fog effects? Do you think it's because he wanted to do like an EC Comics horror thing? Like, I'm curious why he does this as opposed to, maybe like a Halloween follow-up, because he doesn't direct the sequel and it comes out the same year. I'm curious why he would want to do the fog specifically.
I mean, it's probably, because he didn't want to do a sequel to Halloween.
Yes, he's very adamant about, like, you can pay me all the money you want to make sequels, but I ain't going to do it.
Yeah, and it's like, we've talked about that a lot when we've recorded, Halloween and our Halloween month. It didn't need a sequel.
Yeah.
And I think doing the fog was, hey, this is based off of another book. Because, I mean, Halloween was based off of a book.
Halloween was based off of a book?
Yeah.
No? What book are you talking about?
Halloween.
Halloween was based off of Halloween?
Oh, sorry. No, Halloween wasn't based off a book. They wrote the book, I think, after Halloween came out.
Yeah, the novelization.
But The Fog is based off of a book.
Yeah, well, The Fog's based off of, like, a book, and it's also kind of a remake of, like, a 50s monster movie. But even then, I think they're both kind of tangential inspirations as opposed to like straight remakes, I think.
Yeah, so I think it was a thing where, he had all his success from Halloween, didn't want to push, a sequel because it didn't need a sequel.
They were going to make it with or without him, and he's like, if I can make me a producer and I'll get paid for it.
And then, there was this book called The Fog, same title as the movie. And I think he was just kind of like, this is an interesting story. Let's try it. It's like, I've already done this where I was able to, be creative and make this movie work with the limited funds and, effects. And it was kind of like, it worked really well not having all that money because it allows you to be so creative that you're just able to create the suspense.
It's the workaround mentality. Yeah.
So I think, with The Fog, it was kind of the same thing too, where we have a bigger budget, but we're not seeing the monster.
It's a bigger budget, but it's not a blockbuster budget, right? He basically had a little over double the budget he had for Halloween, and he's like, okay, well, with this money, I know I can do at least this level of spooky.
Yeah.
So I guess that makes sense because he's not going to make Escape from New York on $800,000. That's just not gonna happen. No, there's too much action stuff.
And this is, another way to still stay in the horror genre, but not kind of, push yourself up against the wall with, it's got to be another slasher. I've got to create another slasher, killer. This is something supernatural, ominous, because original Halloween, he's not supernatural. He's just, a guy.
Yeah, I mean, the original Halloween is far more of a retelling of Black Christmas than anything else. And I think it's also a thing where Carpenter, at least at this point in his filmography, he's very okay just doing horror movies. Because, I think a lot of other horror filmmakers get resentful that they only make horror movies after a while. Like Wes Craven was maybe resentful is not the right word, but he really wasn't thrilled to keep doing horror movies late in his career. He was like, I want to do musicals, I want to do dramas, I want to do comedies, but the only thing I can get greenlit is horror movies.
Or James Whale.
James Wales was another one where he tries to make his one like drama film, it bombs, and he's like, well, fuck me, I guess I'm out of a job unless I want to do horror movies.
It's like, I didn't want to get typecast as, a horror director, but it's like, you do it so well.
Tale as old as time.
Yes.
And I think Carpenter is almost the antithesis of that, at least now, or at least at that point, was he was a big fan of horror movies. These were the stuff he liked growing up. He liked this, he liked Westerns, and he kind of makes those movies, Assault on Precinct 13 is kind of a Western film. A lot of it looks like a Howard Hawks Western. He does.
Still one of the most shocking films I've ever seen.
It's a great movie. But, and then he does like Halloween, he does The Fog, which are good horror movies. He does Escape from LA, which is very inspired by the Man with No Name trilogy. It's a thing where at this point, I think he could have done something that wasn't a horror movie. He could have done like a psychological thriller or a drama or whatever.
That would have been amazing.
If he was like, Silence of the Lamb wasn't out at this point, but he does his Silence of the Lambs like tight thriller movie, he could have done that. Or
if he had even focused on like that time in California when we had like all the serial killers. If he had focused on that, if he had done something like Zodiac, the movie that you love.
Or if, I guess at that point, if he made like a Dirty Harry-esque like crime thriller, like it's a thing where at this stage Carpenter could have gone a few different ways after coming off of Halloween. He kind of got a green light, but I think he was okay just making more horror movies. And
I mean, horror movies are fun.
Well, they're fun and they always make money.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing where The Fog was a very like passion project driven kind of film where he's like, I like doing this stuff. I like ghost stories. I like this book. I like this stuff. And
we're filming in a real town.
And I think this was a passion project choice, which the next movie we talk about this month was not a passion project choice.
No, but it's going to be a fun one to talk about.
It's going to be a great one. But that's the thing about The Fog, where it is much better than it really should have been, considering all the problems he had with it. And if you're gonna watch it, the atmosphere of this movie is so good. Like, you should really you could watch this movie with the sound off and kind of get a vibe for it. It's really good.
I wouldn't be surprised if someone on YouTube has created like one of those ambient videos
where it's just the fog rolling into Antonio Bay.
Just the fog rolling in, the music, like, you just sit there and just vibe on it. Because this whole movie, apart from, the killer pirates and, people sitting up on the autopsy tables, it's a vibe, man.
It's just a vibe, man.
But I mean, it is shocking because it's in between you're enjoying the scenery, what's in the fog, and then, you have the bodies that you have to contend with, and, the mystery going onto the ship, and then you have Nick, who is, I was just on this boat. This boat is, looking at it and looking at like the gauges and everything. This boat looks like it's been underwater for months. The same with the bodies. They're like, there's so much water in these bodies. They look like they could have been waterlogged, under the ocean, for months at a time. Not, they were just killed last night.
See, and that's something interesting about the story of this is, do you think it was a mistake to give the mystery away so early? I think because if we're following like Nick and Liz or whatever, and they're like, why is this? Oh my God, how is this happening? And we know it's because fucking magic.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting thing about it, where could you have gone like the first half of the movie, it's a mystery trying to solve it, and then at the midpoint, oh, they're fucking ghost pirates, and then the last half of it is them trying to figure out a way to defeat them?
Maybe. I haven't read the original book. So I don't know how much of it is in the same vein, if there's ghost pirates in it, or it's something else that's, causing, the stuff with the fog. My mom read the book. She really liked the original book when it came out. She loves this movie. So if there are ghost pirates in the book, maybe that's why they told it in the beginning, because it's like, oh, I read that, or someone I know read it. It's this. So maybe they didn't want to cause spoilers.
Well, the other thing is, the beginning of the movie was part of the reshoots that were done, and it had to have been, we need to set a tone and an atmosphere, and also just explain it might have been a thing where like the original cut of it structurally didn't lend itself to ghost pirates kind of thing. Like the original cut of it might have been what I'm saying, where it's a mystery you don't know, and then the last half of it is they're ghost pirates and now we have to defeat them.
Yeah.
And maybe watching that version of the movie doesn't work without the opening where we explain, no, there's ghost pirates and we're going to be fighting ghost pirates, guys. Just get on the train. Don't get, angry at me when the magic shit starts happening.
It could be a thing where, maybe they did film it that way and it was just kind of more like, what? Ghost pirates? Really? That's who the enemy is, versus, doing it at the beginning and really laying that foundation of, there is a possibility that this is, real and we could see it work. And it's like, that is scary. That is scary that this ghost story isn't just a ghost story. It is something, that the spirits are upset about and, they're physically manifesting themselves back to take on the town.
It's the whole thing where, like, the reality of the past, your past coming back to haunt you and things like that.
And it's like, even if you weren't there, it's, your family was the one that caused this injustice. And it's like, the spirits don't care. It's like, you're part of that lineage, that bloodline. They're going to take you out.
They're going to get your ass. Anything else you want to say about The Fog? Well, I mean, your favorite Carpenter film, your favorite film of all time?
One of my favorite Carpenter ones. I mean, I think we have to talk about the ending.
Yes, the ending of this movie.
You talked about it a little bit with the cross, because we're getting clues, with, the dead bodies. Stevie's son finds the part of the ship, the Elizabeth Dane, the sign on the ship.
And also Malloy kind of just lays it out for us, the father from the journal. The
father from the journal. You have these series of events that happen. The earthquake happens, and it, dislodges one of the stones in the church, and that's where Father Malloy finds the journal.
Yeah.
And he's reading, what happened, and it's like, okay, we're setting up the pieces, and he talks about the gold coin, and that's what Stevie's son finds. She finds a gold coin that turns into part of the signage of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, so we're getting, pieces here and there building up to the very ending where the gold was turned into this cross.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, they're not going to steal the cross, so, we got your gold, and it's on display, and it's just like, so it really didn't go to building up the town? It's more of a symbol?
No, I think it did go up to building up the town. I think
they just made a sweet cross out of it, too?
Well, I think that was the thing where it's like you couldn't, they built up the town and that was the gold left over, or that was the evidence of the leftover gold. Mm-hmm. See, that's the thing about the movie where it's like the plot starts getting really weird, where I'm like, okay, so is all the gold on the cross, or is that the leftovers? Because that's not really well explained.
Yeah, because I mean,
that cross is like fucking 3 feet tall. It probably weighs like 100-something pounds.
It's huge. That's why it's like, that would be where the movie would benefit from a flashback to see what the town looked like way back then. And it's like, oh yeah, they need help.
I don't think you need flashbacks, but just an extra 10 minutes just to clear up some things.
Yeah, because it's like, well, did all the money go into that? And it was just kind of like, well, you're not going to get it back, and you're not going to steal a cross. It's not going to make sense for you guys to steal this, almost 4 foot tall, however many pounds cross. It's just going to weigh you down on the ship. And it's like,
well, no, because they get him to crash the boat into Antonio Bay, and then they go and salvage the gold after everyone's dead. And when they salvaged the gold, it was to use it to. No, wait. Now I'm kind of remembering what's going on. No, it's because those guys were lepers, and
they had leprosy.
They had leprosy, and they were establishing a leper colony there. But the townsfolk didn't want that, so they scuttled their ship. They got it to crash, and then when they went to recover what was in there, it was all the gold.
Yeah,
and then they made the gold into a cross. So it wasn't to build up the town. They just didn't want a leper colony off the coast. Again, this movie is really great atmosphere, really good acting. The plot gets a little messy.
It gets a little muddy, but, it leads all up to the very end where more or less everyone ends up in the church. All of our, all the people that have a storyline in this movie.
All the plot lines converge in the climax, and they meet up in the church.
They finally meet up at the church, and that's when we have, Father Malloy with the cross, and we have one of the greatest John Carpenter shots of the fog rolling into the church and all the pirates in the pews.
Oh, the nice wide shot of like all the fog coming in, the big glow from it, the silhouettes, and all the pirates are there with the red eyes, and the priest is standing with the fucking cross. It's so fucking good looking.
Because, leading up to that scene, we only see, the red eyes every now and then. We have the kills on the boat.
It's a rather bloodless movie.
It's a bloodless movie, but everyone's being killed from behind. So it's like, you have people that are scared and they're out on the deck of the boat. And it's like you're seeing them either being impaled, and then it's like you get very brief glimpses, but it's not until that scene
where you get to see like a fucking cowboy of these guys, or a cowboy shot.
And it's terrifying. It's like, hell yeah, I was already afraid of the fog. Now, I'm really afraid of the fog and what it brings. And that's one of the greatest Carpenter shots, is them in the church.
There's always a great... it's the thing where it's like this era of Carpenter is so good because he had such an eye for composition. It's a thing that I don't think he loses his eye for like composition and filling up frames and all that stuff until like the 90s. And I'm gonna let everybody know, one day we'll be covering 90s John Carpenter, and it'll be a wild one. But no, I agree with you. Again, it's a thing where it's like, I'll never argue Carpenter in his prime could not compose great imagery, because there's some great imagery here. But yeah, the ending of it, when Malloy is like, here's your gold, you can take it back, and then you'll leave us be, and the ghosts disappear, and everyone's like, oh, the day is saved, oh my god, oh wonderful. And then everyone like leaves, and
they go about their lives. They're like, wow, that was a crazy night, I'm gonna go home. And then, we're back in the church, and then you just see the fog roll underneath the door. And it was just like...
Malloy's like, well, we got them. Well, he only killed 5 people, but there were 6 conspirators. Who was the 6th? And then he turns around, and he realizes, oh, my ancestor was the 6th conspirator, and Blake kills him, cut to black.
And it's just like... It's a John Carpenter movie. It's awesome.
The other thing leading into my point, that's a true EC Comics, like Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, like ending where it's like, oh, we think we've won. No one gets away if they did something bad, and then they get Father Malloy. The ending's really good.
Yeah.
It's a thing where, God, this movie is really, really good. I just cannot get behind all the scripty story plot stuff. That's just like, that's weird. That's awkward. It's like the thing where I'm like, man, Tom Atkins, you're a really good looking guy. You're landing 22-year-old Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, that's problematic. I mean,
I don't think it's problematic. It's just like, that's weird.
It's problematic in the sense where, hey, I just met you. I'm hitchhiking because I'm, working my way up, California. Cool. You seem all right. And then, 2 seconds later. That was great. I like your house, by the way. It's like, what?
That is a thing that's funny about this movie is like in Carpenter scripts, Tom Atkins, fucking pussy slayer. He shows up right in his beat up pickup, and Jamie Lee Curtis gets in and be like, so are you weird? And he was like, oh, I'm weird. I'm real weird. And she's like, oh, thank God. Yeah. I'm tired of normal. Charming bit of dialogue. And then hard cut to the next scene. They're just finished fucking, and he's like, and it's smoking like, a ciggy.
That's what's problematic, because it's just like, again, but 80s. What a wild time where it's like you could just hitchhike and then I guess hook up with, who you were hitchhiking with, and then, and that's how we got married, kids.
What a time to be alive.
I was hitchhiking, and then, your father picked me up, and we ended up hitting it off, and it's like, not now. It was like, no, a little bit later into the 80s, and that's when we started getting, the freeway serial killers, and it's just
those were in the 70s. They were telling people to stop hitchhiking in the fucking 70s. Just people didn't listen.
I mean, we still have hitchhiking now. It's called Uber and Lyft. I have, done that, and I have feared for my life sometimes. God,
but yeah, again, that's one of the things where it's like, that's kind of funny, but that is the fog.
And I did like it was a meet cute. You're weird. Oh, thank God.
I'm so tired of normal,
boring ass people. And then the windows blow out.
Yeah. Well, that does blow out in the beginning. And then,
she's like, I forgot to mention, you're my 13th ride. And he's like, oh, great. I'm unlucky.
He wasn't unlucky. They got lucky.
They got lucky. Yes, they did.
But that is The Fog.
That is The Fog.
Any final words before we close out?
I love this movie. I will always love this movie. If you haven't seen it, watch it. Don't watch the 2005 one. Watch the original movie. Watch cinema.
Cinema.
It's kino.
But yeah, I'm a big fan of John Carpenter. He's one of my favorite filmmakers. The Fog, even with the problems I have said, where the plot's a little whatever, the characters are like, that's a really interesting matchup. It's still a lot of fun. It's such a good mood piece. It's such a good atmosphere thing. And, I would recommend watching it. It's a great movie to have on at a party. If you're having a Halloween party, put it on, and every 5-10 minutes you can look over and be like, oh, that looks fucking creepy as fuck. Oh yeah, let's go. The music's great. It's a really well crafted, well constructed movie.
If it's a foggy night, put on the movie. It just adds to the ambiance.
Exactly. This movie is great ambiance.
And it's up there because it also has Jamie Lee Curtis and Janet Leigh in it.
There's very few of those.
There's very few, so it's like, enjoy it. The two Scream Queens together.
But with that, what are we doing next week? Because we've been alluding to it a little bit.
Yes, we've been alluding to it.
The movie Carpenter did solely for the money.
We might have left it out when we were talking about, different adaptations that he's worked on. We're talking about Christine.
That's right. We're going to talk about Christine. It is the John Carpenter's adaptation of the Stephen King novel of the same name. It's the movie he does right after The Thing bombs, and he's like, I need to get my career back on point, and he's gone on record as saying that he thought the movie was trash, and we think he is wrong.
Yes, we do.
But that is what we will be talking about next week. I haven't seen Christine in many years.
Yeah, when I was watching it last night, I think it had been maybe since 2020.
Really?
Yeah, because I remember when, we had the pandemic and I was stuck at home. I went through I'm going to watch all the Stephen King adaptation movies.
Oh, I see.
And so I was like, well, you got to watch Christine. And I was just like, I forgot how good that movie was. And then I just didn't watch it for 5 years. Mm-hmm. And then I watched it last night, and you'll see if I still think it's good. Things might have changed. It's been 5 years.
We shall see, because I'm very excited to find out what you think of Christine. Because
The Fog is everything to me. Apart from Halloween.
Apart from that. But if people wanted to listen to that, where can they go?
If you want to listen to us on a different platform than you currently are, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and our YouTube channel.
You can go to our YouTube channel, The Film Vault. That is The Film Vault on YouTube, because the film club was taken. You can go there and listen or watch the lovely video versions of this podcast. We do... there's probably 200 plus videos on there of us talking about movies.
There's a couple of video episodes of us doing, the podcast.
Exactly. And to remind everybody, it's a podcast. It is not the movies.
Yeah, that's been a thing lately where people are like, why aren't you showing the movie? And it's like,
notice how in the thumbnail it says podcast, and you notice how in the description it says the Film Club podcast. You know how there's 3 or 4 different things you can look at that will tell you that it's not the
podcast,
movie, it's a podcast. Yes, that. But I digress. If you wanted to follow us on social media, where can they go?
If you want to follow us on social media, you could go to the Film Club Podcast on Instagram, where we post upcoming episodes, upcoming guest episodes, random adventures we go on, and memes galore.
And with that,
we'll see you next week in The Fog.
Have a good week, everybody.